Our topic for today is being nonviolent power players. And purposely use the word power because I think so much of power is used in a destructive, negative, angry, violent, controlling, manipulative way. But we know that it's God's power, and if it's going to shift that power to be open vehicles for love and for peace and for grace, we have to be that place to allow not just gentleness, but power, a force, an energy that is the energy of the universe to move through us. And there's no way that that can happen unless we are willing to be seen and to be visible. And I don't mean, it could be seen visibly, but just energetically. So even if we're not out there protesting, that people just being in our presence feel something different than what they normally feel, that they feel like a jolt of, oh, I feel love, I feel a greater peace, a greater sense of joy, that because love and joy and peace is a power, and it just radiates from us the more we align ourselves with it. Why being a nonviolent power player today is just as important as it ever has been is because I think sometimes some of you may experience violence in your life. I know that I haven't to the extent that many people have. And I became more conscious of this on Twitter. I became friends with someone, a beautiful woman. She's a Reiki master. She lives on the East Coast. And we have the same spiritual views, and she applies them to different political issues, and so we sort of had the same take on things, and we just got to know each other. She's very interesting. She's also teaches at Hawkins. She's a writer. She's written her own and produced and directed her own movie, and she's African American, and we just gotten to know each other. And I knew she had lost a brother, but I never really asked her the circumstances of it. I mean, this is Twitter, and I never met her, so I don't get too personal. And then when Mike Brown was killed, and it's interesting, I found out through her Twitter feed long before I ever heard anything on the news. It's an interesting thing how we find out news. And this was very personal to her, and she was putting out her points of view, and and then we have Eric Garner and the Black Lives Matter, and it turns out her brother was shot and killed by police officers. So she would post some things, and they were just statements of truth of what she was standing for. And then I'd read comments, and she'd be attacked with such violence, with threats, with such viciousness. I have never in my life experienced that. I've never had anyone do that to me, ever. And I thought, wow, there's so much violence that I don't even know that's out there. And it wasn't even like she was being provocative. She was just saying these things. And I thought, wow. And the thing that really made it hit home to me was how she responded. She responded with such a power of her truth, but she didn't respond in hate in any way. So all this hate was coming at her. And she just stood her ground. She stood powerful, but never with hate, never with attack back. She was clear with her boundaries where she wasn't willing to accept anymore, but it wasn't ever with hatred. And I thought, that didn't just happen now. This is because she's had this come to her throughout her life, and she's developed a mastery. It's a mastery. Look, I get all tearful and I cry because it's not something I have mastered yet because I haven't been the victim of it. And I think as I've been on the spiritual journey, I have been one, and I've heard others say, well, the news out there is just too negative, and I just need to live my spiritual life. And as I was reading these things that would come out, I just thought, well, I have the luxury where I can choose to ignore it because it's not coming at me. There are people on this planet, there's people in our culture, there's people here in Livermore who don't have a choice. They can't just choose to not pay attention to what's going on because they're the recipients of incredible violence. I posted on my Facebook page and also on my Twitter page an article by Ezra Klein. He used to be a reporter for the Washington Post. Now he is part of another news organization called Vox. And he was saying that people told them how courageous they were to reprint the the cartoons from Charlie Hebdo because it was, they were trying to bring understanding about what it was about and what satire is about. And I didn't necessarily agree with them, but it was good to have an explanation of it. And he said other news organizations were saying how brave we were because we were going to get all this Islamic, this hatred at us. And they said, actually, we didn't receive one, not even an angry tweet. But when we support Islam, or we say anything positive about Islam, this violence comes at us. And even in this article where he's talking about that's where they've gotten all the violence, was anything that they said pro-Islam. Even in the comments, again, the same violence that I saw with my friend on Twitter came there, just this hatred of, he calls it Islamophobia, this hatred of anyone who is Muslim. And it freaks me out and it shocks me. So I started looking at the people who were writing these things, and these are people who could be on Hallmark commercials. They don't look like Duck Dynasty beards and like in my image of where all this hatred and violence and rage would come from. And they look like nice families. And I'm trying to look at the picture and what they do for a living with what's coming out of their mouth, threatening. I mean, people I mean, it has completely been this huge wake-up call for me to think that. So when someone said, when I put nonviolence in the title, someone told me, they said, I prefer to say I'm for reverence of all life. Someone else said, be for peace. We were talking about that last week, being for. And I am for nonviolence, but the reason why I include the word violence in there is because we can't heal what we don't own. One of my many teachers, Barbara Mary Mull, said, if we have this unhealed part down here, and we're all up here and saying, oh, I'm all about peace and joy, and I revere all life, but we don't own what's happening down here, God can't heal it. If we're not actually in the dirt, God can't heal it. So for me, by using the word nonviolence, because people say, why do you include the word violence? Because that is perpetuating it, but it's also acknowledging that it still exists in a big way, and we can't heal it if we don't own it. And so we need to become these power players in this game of life, and allow the power of God to start shifting this energy from violence to nonviolence, and which is peace and harmony and beauty and joy. But we have to actually address it. So how do we do that? Well, we have to be the change. As Gandhi taught, Martin Luther King, we have to be that place, both inwardly and outwardly. So I have my new 3 things. So 3 things of how we do this. First is prayer and meditation. It makes a difference. There's a lot of studies about not only how when we meditate, it not only changes our brain chemistry and makes us less stressful and more peace-filled, it impacts our environment. There was a study by the group, the TM, Transcendental Meditation Group. They like to do a lot of research tests. And this was something I have to admit, I was a member of the Institute of Noetic Sciences like 20 years ago and reading it then, so it's vague in my mind. But I do remember the results because it had such an impact on me that they had a group meditating around the city of D.C. for a period of 6 months. It was very intentional. And during that 6-month period, the crime rate in D.C. went just significantly, as you know in statistics, it was a significant difference in violence going down. And then when they stopped, the violence began to return. Meditation is serving the world. It's not just all about me. It's narcissistic. It has no impact. The more we become peaceful in our own life, it impacts our environment. And the same is true with prayer. Prayer is creating the energy around us. And so prayer is about shifting our thoughts to be in alignment with what we want to be in alignment with. And that's using power and energy and force that's already available to create beauty and harmony and love and peace. How we use our words is very important, and prayer is a conscious time where we stop and are using our words and our thoughts to move in alignment with our highest ideas. And I love what someone said. They called it prayer. The reason why it's called prayer work is because so many times our regular thought patterns are not in alignment with what we want, so sometimes it feels like work to move our thoughts and our words in alignment with our highest ideals because we've been off worrying, thinking maybe lower energy thoughts. the Greek Orthodox monks, Father Maximos, he felt this call to be a monk. And he talks about when he first entered the monastery on Mount Athos, he just saw a bunch of people just, nobody was saying anything. He said, oh no, what have I done? I've entered it. This is what he was thinking in his head. I'm just standing there thinking in my head, I've just entered a world of dead people. And as he had this thought, one of the monks comes up from behind him and he says, no, we're more alive than the people out there. And he was so startled that his thoughts had been heard. We were talking about this on Thursday about do monastics when you just pray, if that's all you do. And what Father Maximos says, and I really resonate and feel for me that this is true. He says for him it's not metaphorical, it's literal, that the monastics of all religions who are praying, who live away from the world and just pray for the earth and all the people and the plants and the things are literally what keep us alive. That if they weren't doing the prayer work that they were doing, we still wouldn't be here. And he also adds, even as I've met with people one-on-one, there's householders who are also joining us in the work. They're doing it in their everyday lives. Our prayer work helps. It's the more we do it and the more we combine and unify with all the other people doing prayer work, it makes a difference. So how do we become nonviolent power players, peaceful power players? We begin with prayer and meditation, and we get serious about it, consistent about it. Thursday night, Beth and I met here for prayer. We prayed for the Livermore Valley. And some people are saying, well, that's exclusive. We included Dublin and Pleasanton. But then we have Gloria over here. It's from Antioch. This is a real perplexity. So here, let me just, what?
She stayed in the car.
I know. Well, I said we're just going to bless her car wherever it goes. So here's the thought. It's not to be exclusive. We'll always end the prayer blessing the world. But because I feel very serious about this, it's an energy I really want to cultivate. So for me, it's something we do every week, praying for the Livermore Valley. And then next year, we're going to pray for the Bay Area. And we're going to get stronger and stronger in our prayer work as we're going to be doing, you change. In fact, across the board, every research study on prayer about whether it works for other people, across the board, it always helps the person praying the most. So just this commitment to pray for Livermore. And I was thinking it's home, where our home is, our life, where we hold our home. We start with that place, and then every year we expand it until we are including the entire planet. By the time we get to that place, we are going to be so prayed up that it's going to be a powerful energy and force. So it's not to be exclusive, it's just to really... when we want to change the world, we start with ourselves. So that's the intention behind. It's not to be exclusive, but to really start with our own inner work. So every Thursday, 6:15 to 6:45, we'll be praying here. Every day, I'm asking you to pray for yourself, your world, your home, and Livermore Valley. And then, like I said, next year, and end it with including the whole world, but just really start focusing that prayer work. In every level, finances, health, beauty, abundance, divine relationships, divine creative expression, so that in every area of life, we are becoming heaven on earth. That's the highest ideal, is we become heaven on earth, and we start with ourselves and our home. That's one. I'll never make it. I got to go faster. Okay. 2, we were talking about not judging, and then rather than focusing on not being judgmental, focusing on being loving. But there was a great inquiry that came up last week in the discussion about the difference between punishment and accountability. Because I was saying that there's a secret fear that most people have, is that they're being punished, or if they don't do what's right. Even though we don't philosophically believe that, or conceptually, I think because it's been so much part of the history of the evolution of our planet, and there's still a lot of that belief now, as pertained with all this violence. If you say what you think, you get attacked violently, that impacts us. So we have a fear of punishment. And we're a very punishing culture. We love to blame people. So we have to so it seems to me one of the areas we have to get clear on to become places of nonviolence within ourselves is to distinguish when we are being punishing and when we are being accountable. So punishing would say, I'm a terrible, awful person, and I hate you, Harriet, because you screwed up. Accountable is saying, I love you, Harriet. you are always loved no matter what. You didn't do this correctly, but you are okay. You didn't do this correctly. I love that example in the reading today. The skillful means you're not beating the child up and say you spilled milk. You're a rotten kid, go into the room. You're saying, okay, hold you accountable. You spilled milk, go clean it up. You don't hate you. There's no big emotional reaction. It's just what do we do to fix it? So this week, I'm asking you to really get clear in your prayer and meditation to be peaceful warriors. And I'm asking you to start noticing, when are you being punishing with yourself or other people? And when are you just saying, I'm holding them accountable? So the people who are attacking this woman or attacking anyone, whatever issues with that violence and that aggressive, do I feel punishing back towards them? Where's my body? Am I feeling hatred towards them? Do I just want to say, you're evil and, or do I want to say, this is not okay? That's what I loved about her example. This is not okay to do this. And I know there's something greater about who and what you are. I refuse to hate you. I will work on loving who you really are, and I will not accept this behavior. That's a completely different shift. And so we want to do it both. Some people say you have to start with yourself and then work out. I think we want to do both. During the week, in your work life, in your relationships, with yourself, are you being punishing towards yourself or towards another person? Or are you holding yourself accountable with unconditional love, holding other people accountable with unconditional love, authentic unconditional love, not just surface love, deep love? Because I believe every one of us on this planet truly wants to be beautiful, loving beings. I mean, that's what we all want to be. We just fail at it miserably often. But we want to. And so we hold that reality. And the last one, the third, is exactly what Phil Jackson was talking. Oh, and I wanted to just give an example, because we're using this book, Sacred Hoops. And it's great because it's about basketball, which just takes away from all that intensity. Because it was such a great example. He was really working on them building this unified team. They won 3 world championships with Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's now not on the team. They're trying to find out who they are without a big superstar. They're in the playoffs. They're 1 point down, or I think 1 point down in the game. There's 1 minute and 9 seconds left, and the coach says, Scotty, pass it to Tony and he'll make the shot. And Scotty was mad. He wanted to be the dude. He wanted to be the man, he said. And he went and sat on the bench. He said, I'm not playing. This is a minute with 1 minute 9 seconds left. They made the shot. They went into the dressing room. The older player, his name's Bill Cartwright, his wife said she's never seen him cry enough in 15 years. And he said, Scotty, that hurt more than anything. And he started crying. He said, you betrayed the whole group. What you did was really selfish. And Scotty heard him and apologized and then talked about his frustration. The coach left the room, and the team continued to talk amongst each other. Isn't that like U2 something? Sorry. Street with no name? Anyway, sorry. They all started talking with each other, and then the next day when the coach came, Scotty said, the team and I, we worked it out. We worked it out, and I'm good, and I'm here, and I will never do that again. And the coach, Phil Jackson, says that was the turning point. They suddenly became this incredible unified team because of the way the conflict was handled. They didn't say, because you could also see, just especially with athletes, oh man, you're a selfish player, Scotty, you're just a narcissist, forget you, and they just go off the rest of the evening stomping mad at what Scotty did. But they didn't do that. They chose to not punish him by ignoring him, by isolating him, by blaming him, but they chose to respect him and love him by holding him accountable but still loving him and being present with him. That was the culture that Phil Jackson created amongst the team. So that's the culture we want to create in our own life. That's the difference between punishing and just versus accountability. We stay with ourselves and with each other till we walk through that. And that gets us to the third point, which is the listening, which he talked about in the reading, that when we get to that place of compassion, now we're just allowing that compassion to arise moment to moment. And what that is, why I love that so much. Joel Goldsmith talks about this too, not living on yesterday's manna, not living on what I read about yesterday or the theories that I read or things that I've done in the past. Every moment is unique, and we can't touch into that until we start becoming authentic authorities to our own interior guidance. We have to be able to be fully present in the moment and saying, what is being asked to be shared in this moment? Sometimes it's just pure silence. Sometimes it's to be very provocative. I mean, Martin Luther King wasn't just a purely peaceful guy just sitting around blessing everybody in the world. He was, and Gandhi, intentionally provocative. And the key is when do we know to be provocative? When do we know that we have the strength to be provocative? Because sometimes when we're provocative, as we know with the nonviolent movement, you get all this energy coming back. And do I have the strength to deal with that in love and in peace? So we have to, and no one can tell us how we need to respond, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's with family, whether it's at work, whether it's with a grocery store clerk. Every moment is to start becoming masters of our own interior guidance. And to me, that was just brilliant. I remember I did an exercise once where we were never allowed to quote a book. We could only speak from our interior awareness in that moment. And it was one of the most powerful hours I ever had. We spend so much time quoting what other people say. Listen to our interior world. That's where we get our mastery. If you're in a punishing energy place, be aware of that and then don't listen. So to be awake spiritually is all about becoming conscious. The more conscious we become, the more light we become. It's not about becoming perfect. Oh, I feel, because you have to be honest with yourself if you're conscious. When I have to sit with the anger and fear. Sometimes anger comes from the fear. When I read all that hatred and violence and aggressiveness, I feel fear, I feel terror. I don't feel love, that's for sure. And we have to be aware of that. Where do I want to respond from? And what work do I have to do to get to that place where I can respond from a strong and powerful place, not a fearful place, not a terrorized place, because it's going to be off-centered then. So it's all about being conscious. Being a nonviolent power player in the world is about waking up to who you are and being a master at it. Pray and meditate. It changes the world. Be aware of yourself and other people, how you are with yourself and other people. Are you punishing in your mind, or are you just holding them accountable? Are you being loving and holding them accountable? And are we listening? Are we listening to what's arising in us moment by moment and following that direction? The reading ended today. We don't have to seek direction. When we just stop and listen from within, the direction automatically comes to us. It's trying to find us if we take time to listen to it. And then we are masters, our theme for the month, masters of love, power, and play. And we are the nonviolent power players, which this world needs as we move into Martin Luther King Day tomorrow. I don't know if you know, there's protests that are happening all over the country. People are saying after they see Selma, the line is, what about now? What are we doing now? It's very present in our culture with the Black Lives Matter, and it's very present with the Islamophobia that's happening. There's a lot of anger and rage out there. We need to be power players of nonviolence, of peace and love, and be seen and felt. Seen, I don't mean with the eyes, seen with the heart, felt, and energetically. We cannot afford to be passive and neutral in this. Yay? Yes? Yes.